feared through Killarney. Now I'm back hitching with a win. But if Mickey Flynn should ever find me, I'll throw me caution all behind me and square off on that son of a bitch again. He cracked open a river too, he beat me Sunday through and through, and so jiggle my unconscious frame. I won me healthy sheriff fights, well lucky son, still happy life since Mickey Flynn beat me dumb and lame.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a full house here at the podcast to be named later, the PTBNL. I am your host, Shane. For tonight, we will not, going forward, have a traditional host. We're all just going to kind of talk and be insane. But this is, for some of us, the first time even we're getting a chance to talk to each other. So I'm going to go through a quick rundown of who everybody is. So I'm going to start out on our West Coast guy, host of our TJ's One of Us show, Scott. Scott, where can everyone find you?
Everyone can find me at SP Novik, and you can also find our sister show, TJ is One of Us, at TJ is One of Us.
On that show with Scott is Andrew. Andrew is also like semi-West Coast-ish. Andrew, where can everyone find you and all of your links?
So I'm AJ _ Santangelo, as well on the TJ One of Us podcast. And then me and Joe Bork, who's also on this one, is True _ Philly Sport. And then I also do a podcast with my brothers called Philly _ Sports Now.
Jesus, I didn't even know about that one. So you're busy. Awesome.
Yes.
You
Plus
mentioned
a full-time job and master's down in Oklahoma. So it keeps me busy.
There you go, man. Well, we appreciate you giving some time here on the new PTBNL over here for the ANYP network. There we go. I'm still getting used to saying it again. And then you mentioned you were on with Joe, who is on for this one. Joe, you had technical difficulties last time. Thanks for being a human and understanding Skype. Joe, why don't you let everyone know where we can find all of you and your work? You don't have to repeat the ones that Andrew already said, so we might as well just give you personals.
Yeah, my Twitter is JJBoric26, and on Spotify, the podcast is True Philadelphian Sportscast. You have to spell it out, not the Twitter account is True _ Philly Sports. So just
Awesome.
to clarify there, and then also I irregularly now because of school, but write for an app called My Sports Vote that everyone should check out. It's pretty cool with polling, with the articles and everything. It's a pretty cool app. So.
It is an awesome app, and you do good work. So we appreciate your time over here. And then for the first time, I think this is the first time anyway that you're joining any of our shows, is Sean New. Sean, I hope to God I've been getting your Twitter account right every single time that I advertise for you. So what is your personal link?
Sean New 27.
Killing it.
On Twitter. And then you can also check me out on the Always Next Year Podcast Network website. I wrote a blog earlier this week. If you guys want to check it out.
Definitely.
Awesome.
Sean, do you still write for someone else as well?
No. I had my own website like a year ago. I just kind of posted my own stuff.
All right, that's what I thought. I couldn't remember if you continued doing that.
Nah.
So this short, awkward little 3-minute intro is going to kind of be present for the next, I don't know, handful of shows. We're all getting to know each other again. You guys are all getting to know some of the new voices. We're coming in from everywhere. We felt like the name was kind of appropriate. You know, we're a bit of a misfit group here. We're pulling from all different types of podcasts, writing sources. We all have different types of career lines. Nothing fits, nothing makes sense, and that's pretty much Philadelphia sports in a nutshell. So we're going with that here for that pod. Before we get into some Philly stuff, we have to, because we have yet to address it on any of the first few shows on PTBNL, is we're going to have to go into this Astros thing. And I'm going to start with Scott, because me and Scott are very much so on the same page to a point where we both want our team cheating. Scott, the Astros went a little too far. They incorporated technology. Does that cross your line, or are you still cool with it?
Yeah, I'm no longer cool with it, and I've found myself in the last week with these horribly run press conferences and just failure to admit any kind of fault at all from the Astros. I'm 100% against them now. My favorite thing that's come out in the last couple of days was, I think it was Jose Altuve. Like, my friend just sent me a funny meme about it, but it's not. The situation isn't funny. Carlos Correa says Jose Altuve didn't cheat. They didn't want to take his jersey off after the walk-off because he got an unfinished tattoo on his collarbone that looked terrible. In terms of bad lies, that's one of the worst I've ever heard in sports history because, number one, he now has to go get a terrible tattoo, which if you're trying to sell a lie, I mean, you got to do that. And number two, just say that you guys cheated. Admit it.
That's it.
Just put your head down and go, sorry, we cheated, we got caught. We disappointed, our fans and our families, and most importantly, our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, like every athlete tends to say, and then move on, and that's it. We will, just kind of write this into the history book and go from there. But they continue to deny it. They continue to not realize how bad this is, and honestly, I'm sick of them. I want them to go away. I want them to get just taken out of contention for the playoffs or not be available to win the World Series for a year, something to that extent, because this is ridiculous.
So much that came from this, and Sean, I'm going to go to you for this one. The anger, and we've talked about this in several different shows at this point. The MLB had an opportunity to kind of handle this in an appropriate way and make one team the villain, and instead they've made themselves the villain, and they did that once again by Manfred's presser today. Now, I don't know how much of this you heard. I'm sure that you've seen some of it on Twitter, though. How do you feel about there seems to be more inclination to protect the Astros hitters in the box in the year 2020 than there is to punish the Astros players for the actions of 2017 through the end of 2019?
Yeah, I definitely don't think Manfred handled it well at all. The entire league is against the Astros, and I guess it's fair for the commissioner of baseball himself to kind of stand up for them. But at the same time, it's they cheated, you found things, and for him to kind of stand up for them in this, it's making him look like the bad guy, like you said, and it's just not a good look for baseball, as a whole,
Absolutely, and that's one of the things that Scott and I have talked about this on Crossing Borders over there with Connor, which I do have to mention Crossing Borders because of all of the shows that I am on and all the shows Scott is on, all of us. That is the one show I continually forget to fucking advertise. So Connor, I'm really sorry, man. It's at Crossing Borders. I think he's got a Twitter right now. It's going to be awkward if he doesn't, but just give it a go. If not, I'm sure there's another Crossing Borders that you guys can check out too.
He does have a Twitter, so
all right,
shout
good.
out to Connor.
Yeah, check. Honestly, Connor's personal Twitter is fantastic. It's at Connor10, especially if you like fantasy sports. He's doing a lot of good work for Unwrapped Sports over there too. But yeah, baseball making themselves the villain, and in particular, man, I almost called him Bud Selig, which is hilarious. Manfred, which crazy that Bud Selig, we were all like, man, he was not good. I would take him back in a minute. Joe Bork, a lot of athletes have kind of come out, or a lot of different baseball players at this point have come out and spoken just vehemently against everything that organization has stood for throughout this kind of bullshit apology. Of all the players who have come out and said anything, what's been the most entertaining comments that you've kind of come across so far?
Well, to me, I would say it's been, Belly's obviously come out, Cody Bellinger, and said a hell of a lot, but Trevor Bauer is obviously a different specimen of a human being. So he doesn't care about whether he's getting fined, what's happening, what's not happening. So he just said it right on the cuff. And I would say him because that's one of the reasons, even though he's nuts, he's always been one of my well-respected players in the league, because I know that dude's always going to tell you exactly how it is right to your face, no matter if you want to hear it or not, or if he's going to kick your ass or not. It's just going to be right to your face. I expect him to probably throw it an Astro. I'm not sure if they play them this season, but if they line up and play each other in the regular season, I expect him to throw it an Astro.
Andrew, if you were a pitcher on an opposing team, a starting pitcher, and you know that it's going to be a very quick trigger for that the entire Umpires Association at this point has been told someone throws and it's even remotely questionable, get them out of the game. It's a safety thing. That being said, if you're a pitcher on a major league roster right now, it doesn't matter if you're an ace or a fifth starter or a spot guy who's coming in. Are you throwing at an Astro, or are you just trying to beat him?
I think I would definitely try to make a statement. So I think definitely within, I think you obviously with the restrictions already coming out from Manfred, I think you'd have to try to make it somewhat not obvious, probably delay it an inning or so. So, like, don't throw at them their first at-bat. But I think the second or third at-bat that, say, Altuve or Springer come up, or Bregman, I think it's definitely fair game. I think as long as there's nothing in the head area, I'm 100% okay with throwing at them.
Look, it's part of the game. It's one of my favorite parts of the game. When I was coaching kids baseball, this definitely got me slightly in trouble. I threw at the kids. It didn't matter if they were 10, 11, 12, like we use tennis balls, but like it's important to learn how to absorb that kind of a contact. And it's part of the game. If you throw in someone's ribs, you throw at someone's, ass cheek or thigh, you get a bruise and you move on in life. Throw at your head, throw at your hands. Those are two things that you have to avoid. There's too many small bones in your hands and your head, obviously, with what we know. You can't do. Trevor Bauer, by the way, Joe, that's a guy that's going to throw at someone's head. He's fucking nuts.
He might be a danger to the Astros' well-being. Yeah.
You think so? Let's go back to Sean on this one. A lot of different pitchers have come out. There are several that I don't know how serious they are, of saying that they want to sue the Astros for a detriment to their career. Some pitchers aren't pitching ever again because of the ERA that was inflated by those Astros games. Now that's bullshit. If you're not a good pitcher, you're not a good pitcher. But one pitcher that we can kind of take a look at is Clayton Kershaw and his numbers in the postseason against them, and how different that was at home. And if there's a guy that deserves a World Series in baseball, it's Clayton Kershaw. What would you, if you were one of those pitchers, what would be your approach? Would you kind of take a look at the rest of your career and say, you know what, I'm going to fade away quietly right now. This just sucked. Or would you cause a bunch of shit?
I definitely think it's like almost like a Hail Mary to save their career, kind of like to say like this is an opportunity to put your name back out there. And I think they're just kind of taking advantage of it. But I think it was Joe Giglio actually tweeted when all this started coming out that if these pitchers do this, how come a handful of pitchers from like the early 2000s like not come out when the whole steroid thing happened? Like,
yep.
It's too late. Like, your career ended. You weren't a good pitcher to begin with, kind of like. If it was me personally, I'd probably be doing the same thing just to try and like bring my name up again in like the news. But to be honest, it's too late. Like. The Astros didn't single-handedly end your career. It's like you weren't a good enough pitcher to stay in the MLB anyway. Like, that's my opinion.
I think the Hail Mary reference is pretty appropriate. Do I think that there will be some pitchers that may get a shot in, lesser rebuilding organizations? Possibly. You could see some Marlins pop up, you could see some Pirates. They're always the Pirates. But let's go to what the environment is going to be like. Now we kind of have the luxury at this point that we're scattered all across the country here. So let's start with Scott. Scott, we've talked just almost ad nauseum at how much LA fans are just so fair weathered, and it's just something to do as opposed to what it really is like in Philadelphia. Do you think that the Astros coming to town in either of those ballparks out there are going to bring a different kind of energy, or do you think LA is still kind of going to be LA?
I think that the Dodgers and the Angels are two very different organizations, and you have very different experiences when you go to both stadiums. Now, there is a giant, very lively Latino community that are diehard Dodger fans. And I think if you go to a Dodgers stadium now and you're wearing an Astros jersey or an Astros shirt, I think you're kind of in for a world of hurt, because Clayton Kershaw is like the hero of Dodgers baseball. And they all love him, whether you're Latino, white, black, doesn't matter. Everyone loves him, and they all feel for him and have had a hard time defending him in the media and other fans. So I think at this point it's become personal, and the Dodgers realize that they're the ones that are the most to lose from this scandal. The Angels, honestly, I don't think they give a shit, because there aren't real Angels fans. I know like 3 of them. So everyone else just kind of goes to the games because it's cheap, and, you can go there on a Friday night, have a couple beers, and leave in the 5th inning, even though you showed up in the 3rd, you're still kind of just doing that. So it definitely changes the experience a little bit when you go to Dodger Stadium. And I do really feel bad for the Dodgers that way. This is the first time I've ever had to admit that in my life, but they got fucked by the scandal, like pretty bad.
Absolutely. Joe, on the other side of the coast, obviously you go to a lot of Phillies games. You probably go to more sporting events in the city of Philadelphia than all of us here, which is awesome. So as someone who's going to be in that stadium, what do you expect the environment to be like? Now, we don't play that division this year.
We play them in Houston. We don't play them
in Houston, excuse me, right.
Yeah.
But just hypothetically, we meet up in the World Series. What do you think the environment of Citizens Bank Park would be?
You're going to have a lot of signs, let me say. You're going to have some pretty funny signs on.
What would your sign be?
Well, that's also if I'm rich enough to be able to go to a World Series game.
You mean that this podcast doesn't pay you enough?
But, I don't have a hell of a lot of funds at the current moment. But that's a good That's a good question, because my tough thing with the Astros is they have a lot of those players that before were like the liked players around the league. The Bregmans, the Altuves, they were considered part of the aura of like ambassadors of the league. And now you look at them going, well, how the hell am I supposed to look at you the same way? Even though I want to not hate you, I kind of have to hate you. Like, it's a weird feeling when you used to like the person for coming up through the minors as a player, because baseball, as I think Shane knows, has been my favorite sport. So I pay attention to some of that stuff more than other things, but I don't even know what my sign would say. It would probably be something corny, because I just wouldn't. I'm too nice of a person to come straight at someone's soul as an individual player. Like, the only way I would do that is if someone.
How the hell do you have a podcast called True Philadelphians Podcast and you'd be out there being like, please don't cheat. Love, Joe.
Oh no, I'm not like that. I was pissed when I found out about the Astros. I was pissed because that was a surreal World Series too. Because I don't know if we all remember this, but that was after the storm wrecked Houston, similar to how Boston won after the bombing. Like, it was something that was like a storybook ending, and they ruined a storybook ending for their city as well in the first World Series. So that's kind of a bad sign.
Just a piece of metal, according to Manfred.
Yeah, well, I feel like Rob
like a trash can.
Not like baseball.
Such an ass. So let's finish this topic off real quick, because I do feel like we could do an entire show specifically on this. But one player in particular mentioned something that I wholeheartedly agree with. Scott and I have talked about this before as well. Kris Bryant, and we're going to use this to transfer into a Kris Bryant portion of the Philadelphia Phillies section of this podcast, which is the reason most of you are going to listen. Kris Bryant comes out and says, that he believes that what the Astros has done or did is worse than steroids. Now, I don't care about steroids at all. It appears Kris Bryant also does not care about steroids. He brought up a point that said, at the end of the day, you still need to have the physical tools to go out there and make contact with those pitches. You still have to see a 95 to a 98 mile an hour fastball with movement and put a good swing on it. Well, by that same logic, a buzzer or knowing what pitch was coming, you still have to execute. What's the line here? And I'll go to Andrew. For you, do you consider one worse than the other? Do you hate both? If you would sit there and say, you know what, I'm pretty okay with steroids, let them come back in, it is what it is, are you then semi-condoning this level of cheating as well in terms of information?
I would say that the Astros cheating scandal is worse than steroids. So I do agree with Kris Bryant in the sense of, both cases you still have to be able to hit the ball, but to his point, if you know a fastball's coming, you basically know where the location most likely will be. Or if you know a curveball, you'll know to lay off it, and then you get in a better situation in a 3-0 count, 3-1 count, rather than chasing a breaking ball in the dirt. You're better off, and you'll know when to hold up on a swing or whatnot. Where steroids, you might have the power, but you don't know whether it's going to be a curveball, so you might still go down chasing something stupid or something in the dirt. So I just say in that sense, I think that the cheating scandal is a lot worse. I would say in terms of, I think that obviously they're both cheating cases. I think where the line becomes very interesting, in my opinion, is if you're going to hold off all these steroids guys I know this is another debate, but if you're going to hold off the steroid players from going into the Hall of Fame. I think with the Astros scandal being a lot worse, I think you're basically saying none of those guys can go in the Hall of Fame either. So if, say, Jose Altuve, when he retires, gets in the Hall of Fame, I think that if that happens and he gets in, you're going to have to end the line at the steroids guys and start letting them get into the Hall of Fame. So I think that's where the line can become very interesting, is when some of these guys have Hall of Fame eligibility.
That's a definitely good point to talk about, and it honestly would take us the rest of the show. So I'll just kind of leave it at this one. I'll go to Sean. What's your stance on the forgiveness of MLB players who do something in the sport that taints their image and taints, what they've kind of done from a productivity level on the field? Would you let some of these steroid era guys in? And if so, in 15, 20 years, if the trajectory of the careers of a Bregman or an Altuve continue on the same path, are you letting them in if the remainder of their career is played in good faith?
I definitely think it depends. Like, for instance, like Carlos Beltran, like all the cheating stuff happened like literally his last year. So I feel like everybody talked about like how this is going to taint his Hall of Fame case. I don't think it should affect him because obviously it was his last season. Like, he put on such a great career before any of this came like out to the public. And I think it's the same with a lot of the steroid guys. Like, it completely depends on when you get caught, how much it actually affected. Like, I think Bonds should have been in years ago. Same with Clemens. Like, these guys put up such great numbers their entire careers, and it wasn't more sort of till the end that they kind of got caught taking steroids, and that's what tainted their entire career. I think if Bregman and Altuve continue to put on the numbers that they've been putting on, even when you now know that they're not going to be cheating, I think like as much as the cheating helped them for how many years now, if they keep doing it where they're not cheating, I think they should get in. But it definitely taints it a good amount.
Is it an asterisk worthy? Or are we Roger Marising this? Like, is that the kind of future path of what the Hall of Fame could be because of the decisions and the way that these penalties have kind of been, I would say, inconsistent with what other image tainting things have been? Like, are we looking at almost a second Hall of Fame? I'll go to Andrew for it again.
I would say I think overall that would be the best bet. Just I think to please everybody, if you create two separate ones, one with asterisks.
This is why people fucking hate baseball.
Exactly, and I think that's where a huge problem is, because I mean even with the Pete Rose case, I think it's just there's guys, Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe Jackson. I mean, there's guys that should be in, and I think I don't think this is ever going to come to an end. I think every few years you're going to get a new scandal or whatnot, and it's just going to keep being a repetitive process, and it's just a matter of time when things get caught. So I think at some point you're really going to lose some of the best players, and I mean, like you guys said, Bonds should be in and Clemens. So I think the best bet would to create a separate one just with an asterisk over the whatever room it goes in.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be an interesting thing to follow over the next 15, 20 years through the duration of these careers. And Andrew, you bring up a good point. Scandals are only going to help, especially in the United States. I mean, we are awful human beings. We live for this shit. Like we need just dirt. We need something else. That's what we're not going to do a politics on this podcast because everyone's going to punch each other in the throat, like through the fucking computer. But so let's roll in from those Kris Bryant comments into some Philadelphia Phillies things. So Bryce Harper arrives in camp and makes some comments that Jack Fritz comes out and says, "Oh no, they got to him. He's drinking the Phillies Kool-Aid. This is what this is." So real quick, just did anyone not see the Bryce Harper comments in terms of what it would mean or what he would prefer in terms of going after a Kris Bryant or a player like that? Did anybody not see those comments today?
I saw him.
I saw him too.
Yeah, I think we all saw him.
All right, cool. Just making sure. I didn't want to throw this question to anyone if they hadn't actually seen any of them. But he's right. So, and it's going to piss a lot of people off. It pisses me off. But the way that these things, like if you take a look at what the Nationals are, they have these top end contracts. You have the Scherzer deal. You have you now have the Strasburg deal. You would have had the Rendon deal hypothetically. But then you do have these young and budding superstars like a Juan Soto out there who is going to make lesser money. And when it is his time, well, Max Scherzer's not going to make $28 million a year. If he's still there, he might be making 12 on a 2-year deal, like for $24 million over 2 years. It's just the way that business works. You need those guys down there at that level who can produce at that level. And he throws out the name specifically of Alec Bohm and Spencer Howard, which are two pieces that I have gone on record on this podcast, possibly on Twitter if I remember my password, that I also would not move. And I would not, especially with the DH coming to the National League. So let's go to Scott first. What is your philosophy as a guy who enjoys numbers in the way that you do and can kind of work cap situations? Not that there's one in baseball. What is your stance on the luxury tax and Bryce Harper's comments here?
I don't particularly care about the luxury tax part of it. I care more about the fact that we do have Bryce Harper kind of drinking the Kool-Aid. So to me, like, he is adopted quicker into Philadelphia, which is a hard city to adopt into, than I had expected. I had expected him to take a couple years to understand what he has to do. And I would have thought he would just want the best guys there, spend the most money. It doesn't matter. It's not his money. Who gives a shit? But it turns out that I agree with his exact thought process. Going over the luxury cap in baseball, whether you have the money or not, just seems a bit unnecessary. And I think, history has proven that you don't have to do it necessarily to win. So I think he's trying to do the best to let the organization grow, not push it right now. He knows he's going to be around for 13 years. And there are other people that can step up. Like, think the most similar kind of sports metaphor I can think of too is all the stuff with Le'Veon Bell. And the Steelers didn't want to pay him. And you know what? They were right. Like, he's an aging running back. We don't need to give him all this money. We can find someone else to fill in that might not be as good, but they'll be okay. And Baum is going to be the third baseman of the future. And I like the fact that Harper buys into this and knows that, we could go out and get Kris Bryant. Yeah, it's a friend of his. And yeah, we would be better right now. But in the long term, we won't be any better. And all that'll happen is we'll spend more money and, potentially just be laughed at for spending all this money and not having anything come out of it.
You take a look at how damaging because the penalties grow each year. They become more significant. You can reset that by going back under the luxury tax. And I think a lot of people, myself included, believe if we went over the luxury tax this year, we have so much money coming off the books next year that we would reset it again. And then we wouldn't probably have to tap into a luxury tax for another couple years. But you don't know. And one thing that Bryce Harper had mentioned is the fact that, before we go and talk about bringing in another high dollar, high talent person, there's another guy in this clubhouse right now that he thinks they're very much so better off with. And this player has gone on record now saying he would like to be in Philadelphia for the duration of his career. And that's JT Realmuto. So, Joe, what do you think is more important? Finding a way to lock up that, honestly, the game's best two-way catcher, if not the best top one or two, or going out there and finding that one additional piece that really helps us in a difficult NL East division? What would you do at this current juncture?
I would say locking up JT, because on your second point, I say for the years you have him, he really helps you in the difficult NL East division. For Harper said 6 years, so say it is 6 years. For at least 4 of those, if not 5 of those 6 years, he's going to be a good catcher for you and help you with that NL East. And I think Harper being kind of the team pump-up man is kind of a good thing, because I never really seen a guy in baseball as a star that knows his farm system as well, because, like, I don't know if you guys remember when he first came here, he started
the Mickey Moniak thing?
Yeah, he started rattling off people in the farm system, some in single A when he first got here. So like you kind of look at him and go, oh, wow, that's interesting.
Well,
So
he makes a lot of money. He's got a good PR team.
yeah, but it's really nice that he pays attention to this and cares about, because they did say this with the Nationals. Harper does tend to care about his younger players developing around him. So obviously, I think we need to keep those guys and sign JT because we don't have the most eye-popping farm system. So you don't want to get rid of those guys either.
We were ranked to have the 5th worst farm system in all of baseball at the end of last year. So
That is absurd.
Exactly.
Considering just 2-3 years ago, we had the 7th best farm system in all of baseball with names like J.P. Crawford. It was the first year we had Mickey Moniak after the number 1 pick. I think the following year it was Adam Hazley was up there, Jorge Alfaro, Nick Williams. We had so much depth in that middle tier of a prospect. And now we have kind of 2 legitimate pieces and 4 or 5 kind of mid-tier. Let's see what can come of this. So having them both ready, and honestly, they could both be ready to compete at some point this year. They've already said that they believe that Spencer Howard will commit good innings to them at some point at the big club level this year. Most of us believe that sooner rather than later, Alec Baum's going to be up. His bat is more than ready. His defense is ass, but honestly, it's not. Who cares if he's hitting 30, 35 home runs and he's coming up and hitting immediately 280 with low strikeout numbers and a high on base percentage? Just put him in the fucking game. It doesn't matter. So, Sean, hold on, Sean. How old are you?
I'm 21.
All right. So what were you? You were still raising your hand to go to the bathroom during the Phillies' last real run, correct?
Yes.
Do you remember a lot of it though? Like,
yeah, a decent amount. Yeah.
All right. So obviously we had all these pieces coming up at one time, and this is really the first time that we have 2 prospects that we can be pretty confident about. Like, we all were confident about the former number 1 prospect in baseball, number 2 prospect, I think he was, Dom Brown, but we had no other pieces beyond Dom Brown in like that near future. These are 2 legitimate pieces of 2 very legitimate needs for the Philadelphia Phillies. And that's kind of what kickstarted that kind of turn for the best 5-6 year run of Philadelphia Phillies baseball in our lifetime, certainly in yours, youngster. What would it mean to you to sit here and see 2 pieces of your core being supported by your superstar in Bryce Harper saying, I need them here in Philadelphia. We can't move on from them. And what would it mean if the organization went out there, moved one or both of them for a Kris Bryant, didn't pay JT, and maybe the both of them walk?
I definitely think, for as far as Harper's quote goes, it's something that somebody has from the perspective of they're going to be here for a long time. So it's in his best interest to keep the young guys because he knows that they'll be with him for at least the next 6+ years. So that's why I think he took that perspective. As far as like, I'm glad he's taking like stock into who he has and like who's coming up. I'm definitely excited for Bohm and Howard because I think they both should be up at the end of spring training, even though they won't be. But I think if you ask somebody like Arrieta or any other pitcher, like veteran pitcher on this team, they'd be telling you to deal Bohm or Howard to go get Bryant because they want the best team right now because they know that they won't be here. And I think that's why it's big that this is Harper's quote, kind of, because he knows that he's here for a long time. And I think as much as I would like to deal Bohm plus for somebody like Kris Bryant and see this team compete next year, I'm definitely excited to not lose these guys and see how they perform like for the 2020 season.
You bring up a really good point with the fact that it's coming from Bryce, coming from your superstar, coming from a guy who's going to be here for another 12 seasons, signing a contract of a lesser AAV to allow for the space to go ahead and pay JT, pay Reese if they continue to go in that direction, make different splashes when the splash is the right splash, which to me is certainly in a free agent pool, not trading in the farm system that's, as Scott mentioned, the 5th worst in baseball at the close of last year. I'll go to you, Andrew, for this. Hold on. I'm going to hold off on that one. I'm going to roll into something different here. So I just looked at the time already, and it's 35 minutes in. So we're going to go into something interesting. We're in spring training. So much has already kind of come out. We see the different hand position of Rhys Hoskins. We see a shorter release point for Nick Pivetta, a guy who so many people across baseball believe was going to break out last year, and obviously that didn't happen. Year 2 of Bryce Harper, and possibly the greatest hair in all of baseball. We have the JT thing. Is he going to get paid? So I want to go just kind of, member by member, something interesting for you guys, whether it's Philadelphia Phillies related or baseball related at this point, because it's quite a saga of an offseason that you guys are looking forward to throughout spring training. Joe, I'm going to start with you. You're kind of our main baseball guy at this point.
Well, for me, my big thing is seeing how, because they sound like complete assholes so far with the scandal, how the Astros react as they keep getting asked about it in spring training, because they talked about it on MLB Network the other day. Correa already is acting like he's tired of it and wants everyone to get out of his face, but you brought it onto yourself, and you have in baseball, especially all these traveling reporters, that you're likely to be asked about this at least till the midway point of the season. So they're going to become more hated as an organization if they can't handle the questioning. And to me, at this point, it proves that it doesn't seem like they can. So that's something that's interesting for me going forward.
So Joe's rocking that male lifetimey approach. I respect it, because I too am going to be sitting here and refreshing Twitter every day, so long as I remember my password, to figure out what the hell is the next Astros dumbassery to come from that organization. Let's go to Andrew, your Joe's counterpart over there on True Philadelphians podcast. What's the storyline that you're looking forward to this spring?
I think one of my big things is just some of the position battles that the Phillies have in the organization. I'm really intrigued on seeing who wins the battle between Vince Velasquez and Nick Pivetta for the 5 spot, and then who gets moved to the bullpen. I'm interested to see. We have a couple different lefties in the bullpen, and I think obviously Alvarez will be a lock for the position, but I think Morgan and Suarez can be a battle between 2 left-handers to try to finalize a roster spot. And then something I'm really looking forward to just for opening day is just Adam Hazley showed a lot of signs last year. I'm really intrigued by what he did in the offseason and what kind of improvements he made going into this year.
I think that's a really underrated thing at this point. The flexibility or versatility of a Scott Kingery to be able to kind of do whatever the hell he needs to is going to allow, and especially if the team doesn't go ahead and make any types of moves. Like Adam Hazley's looking like your everyday center fielder at this point, and I'm absurdly excited about that. So I'm not even going to lie, Andrew. That was one of my things as well. So good poll by you. Scott, what do you got for us?
So I am weirdly the most excited about Joe Girardi's approach to the bullpen. An alarming stat I came across earlier today was the Phils are the second worst team at allowing it not pitching a relief pitcher 3 days in a row. And what's included into this stat is having someone warm up on the third day or third game in a row or whatever. The only team that was worse than them was the Nationals, and they won a World Series, so it doesn't matter what your stats are. They won. They can do whatever they want. Joe Girardi has been just kind of a bullpen-friendly coach his entire career, and he has promised this year that not only will bullpen pitchers not pitch 3 games in a row, they won't warm up that third day. They're not even in the conversation until September. And with that, he's kind of won favor with the little bit of bullpen that we already have established already, and they're all excited for him. So I'm hoping that we can turn our trash bullpen just into a reasonable one. Is that too much to ask for?
I can't say that I'm like super, super excited about the pieces that we have in there. But I love Tommy Hunter. Like, I loved the signing a couple years ago.
Yeah.
So the fact that we were able to bring him back, I'm excited for him because he's essentially had 2 seasons off. So he can be a workhorse when he's healthy, and he wants to be. So come that September, Girardi's going to have a guy that he can give the ball in the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th inning any night. Honestly, he can close, the ninth inning with some of his stuff. So I'm pretty excited about that. Also, we obviously starting pitching has been such a problem that our bullpen has had to go out there and pitch a shit ton. Because when you have Vince Velasquez going 3 1/3 after 6 hours of pitching, you end up using 6 guys that night in game 1 of a series, and then Nick Pivetta goes out and you don't know if you're getting, honestly, anyone other than Aaron Nola, who also wasn't great last year. So some stability to all of this is going to help this bullpen, along with a coach who recognizes the importance of managing the appearances, managing the work that those guys are doing, even in the bullpen, which I did not know, Scott, that even warming up in the bullpen is considered a third day or an additional day within that three-day stat. So that's pretty interesting. Sean, I'll go to you. So what is something that you're interested, whether it's Philadelphia Phillies related or baseball related?
I was actually going to bring up the whole bullpen thing too, and I mentioned this in my most recent article, that I think just because of how many guys you have going to spring training, like the mix of the young guys on the 40-man roster with the amount of non-roster invitees we signed the veterans, I think you're going to have a whole mix of people competing for 8 or 9 spots, and I think it's going to make for a great competition. So that's one thing I'm looking forward to in spring training. The other thing is I'm going to take the easy route here and say I can't wait to see Alec Boehm hit in the same lineup as Bryce Harper. I feel like that's one thing we can all say.
Yeah, for sure.
Just seeing him in the same lineup as these guys like Reese and JT and Bryce, I think it's enough to make everybody excited for the season.
I very much so agree. Having 2 legitimate right-handed power back guys for whatever Reese did in the second half last year, who was statistically the worst hitter in baseball. When he is on, and he is a streaky guy, but when he is on, he is a dangerous, dangerous hitter. Him, Boehm, and Bryce, all in the middle of your order, plus JT, plus McCutcheon. The lineup has the potential to be absolutely stacked. So I'm definitely look. I'm a huge Alec Boehm fan. I've seen him at each level at this point. Well, not Clearwater, but each level here. And the guy's he's so much fun, and he looks like Phil Myers in the AHL. He just looks like he's just better than fucking everyone, and I dig that. I'm going to go a route that people would not expect me to go. I'm all in on Bone Spurless Jake, I should say.
Don't say that, Shane. You're making me nervous now.
Listen, he had mentioned in one of his interviews during, I guess it was I think late last week, that he had a similar surgery, that he had at the tail end of his time in Baltimore, goes to Chicago, and obviously his time in Chicago was mostly incredibly successful. I nerded out and did a little research as to what you kind of deal with bone spurs and how much earlier they may be affecting you or be present without you even knowing it. And shockingly, it was not 2 full years, but it was definitely months beyond the point where pain starts. There's different numbness in the fingers, and your energy, blanking on the word right now. You get more tired. Thank you. That's a good one. Whoever just said that. That to me, I feel like if Jake Arrieta is your 4th or 5th pitcher at this point, and especially come middle of the year when we all believe that Spencer Howard's going to be up, but the top 3 of Aaron Nola, Zach Wheeler, and Spencer Howard's pretty fucking good. It's not elite like the rest of our division, unfortunately, but it's good enough to win. Jake Arrieta and a veteran back there, I believe in that again. It's a prove-it year. If he sucks again, he's not making any money. He's not getting a guarantee or a 3, 4, 5 year deal anywhere. Not at his age. He's going to bounce around for 1 year deals. Nobody wants that. So I am all in on Jake Arrieta at this point, which is a weird thing to say because I'm pretty sure he cost me a couple remotes last year during baseball games. But while on Jake Arrieta, a guy who's also fairly outspoken about kind of baseball purist mindsets, baseball's made some rule changes this year. I always find that this is an interesting thing to talk about throughout the off seasons and spring training. Let's get one rule that you guys liked being implemented and one rule that you would like at some point to be implemented, or a variation of something being implemented. Scott, I'm going to start with you.
So I'm kind of surprised that I'm going to take the proposed playoff change into account here when we're talking rule changes. But
Yeah,
I'm
put it all
kind of
together.
surprised at the negative outcry of it. Baseball fans are constantly saying, "Oh, baseball needs to change. They need to do something to update themselves in the times," which I agree with. I'm one of those people. But when they try to change things to make stuff a little more exciting and get everyone in the hunt, which is essentially what the playoff change is proposing, I don't understand why everyone's like, "No, you're ruining the game. No, you're ruining parts of the year and making it not as valuable." Like, you can't have it both ways. Stuff has to change. It can't be the same forever. Like, the times are absolutely changing, and baseball is the last sport to adapt to it. Like, I kind of like the rule change, and I think it just favors and makes things more exciting for baseball, which we all desperately need.
I like one aspect of the rule change. I like the fact that a game that is so much strategy, which really pisses people off because most people are not intelligent enough to fully grasp the sport of baseball. I continually say that. I think most people are idiots. I love the fact that you could have the opportunity to pick your opponent depending on the seed that you are. Do you know how pissed off we're all going to be at the Philadelphia Phillies if they choose to pick an opponent who sweeps them?
It's going to happen, but yeah.
Of course it's going to happen. But like, to sit there like that, to me, adds another element of just mind fuckery within two clubhouses. And I love it. I think that's interesting. I do not want the playoffs to become watered down the way that they are in the NBA and the way that they are in the NHL. I've always thought that the NFL and that Major League Baseball do it right, that you have to be a very good team to make the playoffs. And I'm not for some of these shitty teams just kind of catching lightning in a bottle and taking out a giant. Like, could you imagine, as a Dodgers fan, they're going to win like 130 games this year? It's fucking absurd. Can you imagine being a Dodgers fan and some piece of shit team ekes in, beats them after a bye, and you're out, and Clayton Kershaw doesn't get it again because one fucking thing happened?
I'm sorry to cut you off, Shane.
No, you're
think
good.
That's unfortunately what needs to be done to appeal to a younger audience and get them to love the game, is that crazy kind of, Cinderella story. That's what everyone's after. And, I like the fact that you can be the best team all year and, someone else can get hot at the end. And, we could have the Phils sneaking in and taking out the Dodgers or something like that if we don't win the division or whatever. To me, that is interesting. It is not traditionally what baseball has been about, but we do need to change. We need to make it more exciting. We need to get new fans. I have a hard time explaining to a young kid right now why they should love baseball like I do. There's just not a good reason for it.
It is hard for this particular generation. Scott, do you have any rules that you would like to kind of amend or change, or something totally different that you would like to implement?
I think every MLB team should have to have a 5'7", 140-pound white guy come out of the bullpen once a year. And, all ball clubs, I'm sitting waiting for the call. I mean, I'll take the 10-day contract.
I would pay to go to that game to see you pitch. And I think that you would need to stay in to get 3 outs. I obviously understand the new bullpen rule of you have to see 3 batters, but no, I want to watch Scott pitch to major league hitters and see how many pitches it takes him to get 3 fucking outs.
I mean, I did have a 0 ERA in varsity baseball because I made 1 appearance and got 3 outs. So, I mean, if that's not proof enough, then I don't really know what the major leagues want. But
I threw one pitch in varsity baseball, and I let up a grand slam walk off to a kid whose position I took in like whatever you're in before, like so junior high. We went to different schools. He walked up to the plate. Hadn't seen him in 4 years, whatever it was. First pitch I threw, it was the farthest ball I've ever seen hit in my life. Fucking absurd. All right, Sean, I'm going to go to you next. So one rule that you like or that you're intrigued about so far, and then something that you would like to see implemented differently.
I definitely like the 3-batter minimum. I understand why like baseball diehards don't like it, but I am in favor of speeding up the game in order to grow the popularity of the sport, because I hate that it's dying out in like today's generation. I think the 26-man roster is big. Like I think it's a lot bigger than people are kind of making it out to be. People are kind of forgetting about that. That's a whole nother person that you can have. Like every time you're in an extra inning game and like you feel like you're running out of players on the bench, now there's an extra person. I just feel like that's going to be a lot bigger. There's going to be a lot more strategy on whether you want a 5-man bench or a 9-man bullpen. And I think teams are going to start looking towards teams like the Dodgers and like the other smart teams in the league to see how they kind of handle it. And beyond that, I don't know. I kind of like the NL talking about adopting the DH.
I hate you right now.
It adds more offense. I feel like I like how it is now, and I feel like if you're playing, you should have to hit. If you're a pitcher, you should have to hit. But in terms of how the Phillies are gonna start to look in the next couple of years,
definitely helps us.
Having a DH is gonna help a lot.
It is. I just fucking hate it. Absolutely hate it. But yeah, we will eventually get on to like an actual debate topic on why we should or should not change to a DH league entirely. But I do kind of dig the two separate leagues. Who the hell have I not gone? Joe, let's go to you.
Yeah, for me, I think one of the things that some people pointed to, I don't care about it as much, but I think it's something that it almost seems like the league's managing your roster structure for you a little bit, is you can only have now, I think it would be 8 relievers, because a total of 13 pitchers, so you could have 8 in your pen plus your 5 starters. So you can't have the extra guy because they put the 13 pitcher minimum, and then I think it's 14 from September 1st through the end of the season or something like that. So that seems like a restrictive thing on teams, where my friend and I were talking about this the other day. What the hell does an American League team want an extra bench player up for? They don't even pinch hit rarely to begin with. That guy might be sitting there and have 7 at-bats his entire goddamn season. Because nobody wants him there. Nobody needs him. He's not needed.
Billy Hamilton, man.
Like, yeah, the
ninth
only
inning
reason
wheels.
those players will be needed is if they're Billy Hamilton and fast. You're just going to have a bunch of scrub fast people on teams now just to pinch run because there's an extra position.
Roman Quinn?
I mean, who's going to bang the trash can?
Yeah. That's going to be the guy designated because no one cares if he gets in trouble.
Oh, that was a perfectly timed comment. Andrew, hold on, Joe, did you give anything that you would like to see changed? I just realized I laughed too hard at the trash can thing.
Changed. I mean, everybody's kind of already hit the head on a lot of the big things that I would want changed. I don't really have anything else to really go off of there.
All right, Andrew, how about yourself? And you can repeat things. I know that we've covered just about all the rule changes at this point.
All right, I for one that hasn't been mentioned yet, I would say, I know it doesn't really impact the actual play of the game, but I do like the decrease in the time slotted for the challenges. It went down from 30 to 20 seconds, because I think we can all agree that the 30-second challenge was just like way too long. It's so boring, and it's a disgrace to just see a manager hold up the game for 30 seconds, and then half the time there's not even a punishment for it, so it always goes beyond 30 seconds, and then you have managers arguing with the umpires about the time limit going too far. So I think if they can get it right in terms of having a penalty for it going over 20 or just keeping it at 20 and then it's done, I think that could actually bode well for it and keep the game moving a little faster. And
What would
then
you make
Man,
the
I love
penalty?
wasting my life away. It's the best national pastime, wasting your life away.
What would you want the penalty be? Would you want to lose an out? Would you want a base runner to go back on the paths? Like that was always something I don't really understand where you can put a penalty, because honestly,
What about lose a challenge for next game?
I don't
Yeah.
hate that.
Yeah, I think you could do something like that. Like you automatically lose your challenge for the next game, or even if they just cut it at 20 and just keep it at because I think a lot of cases when it goes beyond that time limit, it doesn't. They still allow them to challenge it. They got to be more forceful. Where if you do hit that 20 or go past the 20, it's done. You can't challenge it. I feel like they've always been too generous and still allowing it to happen. But I think losing your challenge next game would work. Or I guess even if you I don't know, just lose. I guess you only get one. Is that correct? You get one?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I guess you can't lose another one for the game. But I guess maybe, I don't know, a ball to the batter or I don't know, something like that. But I just think something has to be done in terms of that, or else the time limit just is pointless at some points.
I agree. Anything that you would like to see changed or amended?
Well, I think going back to a couple things I already mentioned, I'd say I'm against the DH going into the NL because I think a lot of people call me a traditionalist, which I would agree with, and I like the strategy of baseball, so I like having the pitcher bat and having the manager have to figure out, is this a good time to pitch hit? Do I leave him out there for another inning? So I like all that different aspects of it, and then again, I disagree with the 3 batter minimum too. And it's not that I understand you want to speed the game up, but in terms of, I don't think you're going to add any extra fans by saying, oh, this guy has to face 2 extra batters rather than just coming in for one guy. I just don't think you're going to add many fans just for that one little rule change. So I just disagree with it in that sense. I think it just takes away more from the game than it actually helps it.
It's just going to add offense. Like the specialists now, you're putting them in a particular position to. And there's still strategy. Like I don't like this either. Let's not misconstrue this. But again, you're going to see guys come in here, get their 2 lefties out, see a righty come up, and intentionally walk them. Like, all right, there's your 3 guys. And teams are going to put themselves in that kind of an awkward position at times. It's going to be different. There's still going to be strategy. It's not going to be the same. But in terms of, I'll give you guys hit on all the rule changes. That's fine. I'm going to say this. And this is something, again, we could talk about it on a later pod. We could do an entire pod on this, honestly. I would be accepting and understanding of the DH coming to the NL if it lasted to the duration that your starter was in the game. I don't need to see relief pitchers hit. Like that to me is absurd. There are relief pitchers who go out there and, they take 3 swings their entire fucking career. Like that's not safe. Like forget about bad baseball and like an automatic out. It's not fucking safe to put these guys out there. Allow for your starting pitchers to be baseball players, complete baseball players. Allow for Mad Bum to go out there and just fucking rake. Allow for God damn it, Reds. Dad died, hit a home run.
Michael Lorenzen.
Thank you, Michael Lorenzen. He's a freak. Allow for that guy to go out there and pitch and hit. But when it comes down to the bullpen, enter in strategy. I think that should be adopted in both leagues. If that was going to be the change. But we're approaching an hour here. I want to remind all the listeners at this point that like this show is never going to sound the same. It's probably never going to have 5 people on it again at a time. So we tried this out tonight, bouncing around voice to voice, and it's tough to get into debates with 5 people. So this was definitely more of like 5 different interviews being constructed at once, but still cool nevertheless. But it's going to be different every single time, and you're going to have different voices and different mixes of people on here. I don't care if anyone on the podcast brings on other people from other shows, but we're going to be churning out a lot of content. So before we go back and remind everyone just of our links one last time, let's go to a final thought. Sean, this was your first podcast with us. I've learned that you're 21 and that you like the DH, and that's wrong. But I like you. So what's your final thought that you have for us here at PTBNL?
I didn't come prepared with one. Just that I'm excited for spring training, and check out my article to find out why you should also be excited for spring training and opening day.
Shameless plugs. I like it. That's a good That's a quality final thought.
And I can't wait to do this again.
Awesome, man. Yeah, look, it was definitely good to have you on. Let's go to Scott over there on the West Coast. It's always weird to say that, but I like saying it.
It is weird saying it still. I'm not quite used to it yet. As I sit here seeing a very anticlimactic NBA All-Star game end in the background, what I will say is I am weirdly, even though I shot it down before, I'm weirdly excited for Jake Arrieta as well this year. Bryce Harper had said that Jake Arrieta is now healthy and he is a potential Cy Young candidate. Jesus. While I don't agree with that, I think him being an actual third starter and not having as much pressure on him, with hopefully an enhanced bullpen, should play out extremely well. And if Jake Arrieta ends up, winning 15 games for us this year, everyone else watch out because the Phils are going to be tough to beat then.
Thanks for jumping on the Jake train with me. And, man, I hope that we're not terribly, terribly wrong.
Fine. If we are, we'll just yell about it on the later pod, and the people at home will be better off for it.
That's very true.
All's well that ends well.
So, Joe, on that note, let's go to your final thoughts, sir.
Well, mine is, I think one guy we left out of mentioning in the lineup is how much he's bulked up in the offseason is Scott
The whole fucking
Kingery.
team is on PEDs.
Yeah, but Kingery looks like he's ready to come in and just start shredding it and raking and stay consistent, where we've seen blimps of him being a good hitter. It's just about consistency, where I think him coming in, being a fast guy, Girardi likes to use aggressiveness, base running, and stealing more, not just talk about it.
He's built like a fucking middle linebacker now. I don't know how fast he's still going to be.
So I think he will play very well this year and be one of the catalysts of our team as well, whether that's at third or second. And I'm also on the I've talked about Jake Arrieta to Andrew, who doesn't necessarily agree with me, so I'm also on the Arrieta brain. And then Hazley, I've always liked Adam Hazley. Andrew knows that since he's coming to the league. I probably talked to him about Adam Hazley enough for him to not want to talk about Adam Hazley. So.
I'm so glad that he's not Joe Savory. Another seventh pick guy, left-handed pitcher, comes up. Had to make him a fucking right fielder. Couldn't do that either. I'm so glad that Adam Hazley looks legit.
Yeah, I forgot about that. One other guy I wanted to mention, though, was Robertson, because I don't know about you guys. I didn't even know he had a chance to come back this year. And then he started talking about, oh, yeah, we might have him back in the second half. I'm like, oh, really?
No, because he's not coming back.
If he comes back, though, that does add a different dynamic, because you're adding a pitcher that hasn't pitched for a year period of time.
Because he has a torn ligament in his elbow.
Oh, yeah, I know.
It's not like he's just chilling on a beach somewhere.
Oh, no, I know, but I'm saying he's ahead of his rehab. So all points towards good signs that he might just be one of those freak of natures that recovers quicker than some people.
I hope so, because he was supposed to come over with a fucking clean bill of health. Him and McCutchen both never hurt in their fucking life. Come to Philadelphia. Andrew, let's go to your final thoughts there.
Well, going off that, I was going to say, I think one guy we did leave out was Andrew McCutchen. I'm ready to see how he battles back and comes back. I think I often forget as well, but I think he's often forgotten about of how good he was at the leadoff spot and how much the team kind of derailed after he got hurt last year. So that's one of my final thoughts, is just seeing how he bounces back and how much better he makes the lineup when he does come back.
I love Andrew McCutchen. I've loved him for years. I still love that he's a Philadelphia Philly, but I also can't wait for Mickey Moniak. Like, I'm still on that train. So, like, man, it's very conflicting for me to love Andrew McCutchen as much as I do, knowing that it's probably keeping. I mean, Moniak's keeping Moniak in the minors at this point, but I still fucking love the kid.
I was just saying, I think to that point, I think it is a perfect fit though with McCutchen only having 2 years left. I think it does help, because I think Moniak still has potential too. So I think it does help him, kind of give him a few more years to try to figure it out, and hopefully by the time the McCutchen deal does come to an end, he'll finally be ready in terms of Moniak.
Speaking of Mickey Moniak, real quick before we get to my two final thoughts, did you guys all see the picture of him in the weight room with several of the other Iron Pigs / Reading Phils?
I did not.
Yeah, I did
All
not.
Everyone's sitting here talking about how big Mickey Moniak is. Do you guys remember when you were like 6? So Sean, like last week for you.
Oh my God.
When you like try to flex, but you put your arms. I'm doing it awkwardly right now, and I know no one can see me, but I'm alone in studio. I don't have to explain this. You like push your muscle, your not muscles, like your fucking skin out to look like you have muscles. Like, you guys know what I'm talking about? Like, if you were to sit here and try to like make a muscle flex, and you put your one hand where your bicep is and like push it up, pretending it's there.
Yes,
I get what
remember
you're
doing
saying.
that.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Oh, that's Mickey Moniak. He's not yoked at all. He's still just a skinny guy. He's but I love him. He's fucking Mickey Moniak. So I have 2 final thoughts. One, for an hour and 5 minutes now on this podcast, not for the entire time. I have not been doing this the entire time, but I've been dealing with this the entire time. So I am making fried chicken tomorrow because I'm off, and I'm making the marinade, and I was sitting here chopping onions whilst doing this. So I've been crying the entire fucking pod. So this has been a goddamn nightmare. But holy shit, am I excited for some fried chicken tomorrow. I have not made fried chicken in this house in, I don't know, like 5 years. So I'm definitely excited for that. 2, I'm going to go through it super quick, but there's a million reasons you should be excited for the Philadelphia Phillies this year. Andrew McCutchen, notoriously healthy, gets hurt last year, not getting hurt again this year. When he was in the lineup, we were averaging 6.5 runs a game. That's pretty fucking good. Rhys Hoskins can't possibly be any worse than he fucking was at the end of the year last year. I don't see any way that Scott Kingery falls off for an entire second half. I think that this is the first year we get a complete Scott Kingery. Jake Arrieta doesn't have bone spurs anymore. Aaron Nola came back. His hair is even longer, and that's even sexier. Bryce Harper, though he went totally hipster with his hair long, still a beautiful man. That guy's going to have another he does look good. He's going to be a I love you so much, Steph, wherever you are. But he's going to have another incredible season. Adam Hazley, we've talked about a lot. He's looking like he's going to be out there as your everyday center fielder. We don't have to look at Maikel Franco ever the fuck again. Cesar Hernandez for what he was. Don't ever have to look at him again. And chunky ass Gene Segura moved his fat ass back to second base. All is well in the world right now. This is a damn good baseball team, and we can't possibly be worse. Sir Didi, we went through the whole podcast and we didn't say him at all. I think it's because I'm trying to not get overly. I'll be honest. I love Didi Gregorius. I've loved him for years. I was super fucking excited when we signed him. I was hoping to God it was going to be a 3-year deal, just enough time for Bryson Stott to mature and get his ass up to the big leagues too. Another Vegas boy out there with Bryce Harper, possibly Kris Bryant if all fucking hell breaks loose. Who fucking knows? I was super excited. And we get him for 1 year at $14 million betting on himself, which is smart. So we're going to get a great Didi season. Another excellent reason to be a Philadelphia Phillies fan and be excited at this point. The problem is, really don't think he's going to be a Philly next year. So I'm trying to contain my excitement and just disperse it throughout this season, because I don't know that I'm going to be able to handle that loss very well. Point of this is there's a hell of a lot of reasons to be positive about this Philadelphia Phillies team going in. I know that we are not the sexiest of offseason moving teams as of 2020, certainly not like 2019, but there's a lot to feel good about. So let's go around the table real quick here, and let's go back to all of our plugs. For this one, let's just do our Twitter plugs. So if you have a personal, and then if you're on a show, let's start with Sean. Sean, your Twitter handle again.
Sean New 27, SEANNEW 27. Nice and easy.
Yes, sir. Andrew, go to you.
AJ_Santangelo.
And where can we find yours and Joe's pod again on Twitter?
That is true_Philly Sport. And then my other one with my brother's at Philly Sports Now. And then one I forgot to mention was at Pub Sports Radio.
Awesome. I have no idea what the fuck that is, but you do a lot of shit, man. Good for you. Joe, he mentioned your shows over there, so where can we find you?
At JJ Boric 26 on Twitter.
Awesome. And Scott, where can the people find you?
Find me at SP Novick, and you can also follow our Sixers show, TJ is One of Us, at TJ is One of Us.
Awesome. You can find me on Twitter. It's at Shane_Mead. We do not have a Twitter for this show yet. We will eventually get one. But you can certainly still find this show and any other show that is still under the ANYP umbrella at ANYP. This and all episodes are sponsored by Just Food. It's 215-794-FOOD. Treat yourself. Take it home. That's 215-794-3663. So if you are in the Bucks County area, which half of this fucking team is not, but if you are, I strongly recommend going over there and getting some food. It is absolutely delicious. Go introduce yourselves to our guy, Asian Rob. Tell him that we sent you from ANYP. I don't think he's going to know what the fuck PTBNL is yet because we haven't really told anyone. But thanks for hanging around for this one, guys. It was fun with all five of us. The two that we're not on is the other Joey Joseph. He is at Broseph Biscuit. And then Rob, who is one of our other league guys over here. He has another show. It's Disciples of Ed. It's at Disciples of Ed. So that's our Philadelphia Flyers show. He is at radio_Rob. The two of them could not be here tonight because I'm pretty sure Skype would have had a fucking meltdown. But guys, thank you so much for joining us. We'll probably be back in the next couple days with another show. And then throughout the season, like we've mentioned, we may have as many as 4 or 5 shows a week. But until then, go Phils. Thank God spring training's here.
A fighting man I used to be, revered and feared through Killarney. Now I'm back to hitching with the wind. But if Mickey Flynn should ever find me, I'll throw me caution all behind me and square off on that son of a bitch again. He cracked open a river too, he beat me Sunday through and through, and so jig over my unconscious frame. I won me healthy sheriff fights, well lucky son, still have me life since Mickey Flynn beat me dumb and lame.